Tom is our director of VRinSCHOOL in the Netherlands. And he's going to talk about how to use VR in schools and educational organizations. So Tom, if you're here, join right in.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me well?
I can, absolutely.
Okay, that's perfect. Well, first of all, good morning or good afternoon. Here it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But as I can see, there are a lot of people from other time parts. So good that everyone is here. I would like to share my presentation about how we help schools in the Netherlands. So we're from Europe, the Netherlands. We're from the city Eindhoven. It's a sort of the 5th city in the Netherlands. And we help schools in the Netherlands and in Belgium how they can use VR in their school and how to do this in a successful way. So if you have questions during my presentation, please let us know. I would be happy to answer this. So I'm just going to start, and if someone has questions, please let me know, and I will be keep in touch with the people from Scenario as well. I'm going to share my screen first, and just checking if someone can let me know if everyone sees the screen of my presentation.
Absolutely, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm gonna start my presentation, and as you can see here, what we do as a company, we try to help schools, and the schools are from primary schools to the higher education, like high schools, what you call them in the USA, for example. Here it has another name. And then you also have higher schools, and we actually all help these type of schools. At this moment, we have more or less like 100 schools, which are sort of where we're working together with. And yeah, we see there is so much development around virtual reality, and we're passionate about this. So that's where my presentation is about. How do we work with schools? It's actually quite simple. So we do this in 3 ways. First question to every school which want to start with VR is, where do you want to use it for? And then, of course, it's about the content. So I'm going to talk later more about this and the solutions we offer for schools. Then the second part is about the hardware. Of course, you need headsets, you need VR headsets, and maybe other materials to use VR in a right way. But it's not the first step. So a lot of schools sometimes come to us and they say, we invested a lot in the VR headsets, but we ask them, please start with the content and make a plan around this. I will, yeah, of course, talk later about this. And then the third step is about the training. And what we mean with training is especially to focus as a school and to start with a small group of teachers, and from there grow your VR usement, and not think like, oh, we're gonna start really big and no one has a responsibility. So start small and then grow from there. I will talk about this, of course, also later. First of all, the content, and I've a lot of things to share, but first of all, I would like to start with a view to the future. And this is also really important, I think, for schools, because you can use VR in 2 ways. You could say, on one hand, you could say, okay, we want to use this for different subjects. So you could say, okay, it's for geography, or it's for biology, or for history. You can choose a lot of subjects. But on the other part, it's also about learning to use new technologies. And this is, of course, really important, because if you look in 10 years how the future will look like, VR, AR, it will have a lot of impact. So I want to share a video about this. It's a video from Meta, but I think it's a good start for this presentation. And I'm gonna click on the play right now.
Tom, if there's audio here, you should share the audio on your system because it's not coming across.
Okay. I'm
Wanna
sorry
pause-
about that.
pause it for a second? And then click on share sound. You'll click on the 3 dots to the right and then click on share sound.
So I think I have to stop share and then share again, isn't it?
Nope. You just, you should have a little share toolbar at the bottom, and there's a 3 dots all the way at the right. You click on the 3 dots and then click on share sound. On Zoom.
Let me see if I can find it.
The Zoom. There's a Zoom toolbar. Yeah, see that toolbar? All the way to the right,
Yeah.
the 3, click that, click share sound. Yeah, bring up the toolbar. And then not on that icon, but on the toolbar itself.
I don't see the bar. I'm just gonna do it in a different way. I'm stop share and then share again because then I know how to do this.
Okay,
Sorry about that.
no
Because
problem.
then I can say share sound. I think that works as well.
All right.
I forgot this. I think it has to work right now. Just a quick check.
Some people say the
Yeah,
metaverse will
that's
only
it.
All right. Perfect. Thank you, John. Let's see. All right. So I'm gonna share the video again, but now with the music.
Some people say the metaverse will only be virtual. But one day, this lecture hall will be made of code. And though they're virtual students, what they'll learn together is real. A surgeon will be able to practice as many times as needed in the metaverse before laying her hands on a real patient. Being able to explore a spacecraft is one thing, but the metaverse will let us go farther than any rocket can take us. In the future, students will be able to take a field trip to ancient Rome. And young artists can learn from a masterpiece. Farmers will one day use augmented reality to help ensure the best yields. And urban planners will be able to model traffic solutions to help decrease commute times. So while the metaverse may be virtual, the impact will be real.
Okay, so I shared this video with everyone because we think it's really important to show also schools where the future is going to, and somewhere you have to see the big picture. So these types of videos definitely show how big of an impact VR can have. But on the other hand, and that's where this presentation goes in the end about, it's about how to use VR in a practical way, because you can see these great videos, but in the end, you're a teacher. And how do you use VR in a simple way so it's really worth the investment? And that's what you see in this picture. There's no teacher in this picture. You have to be able to let the students go on with VR themselves. And that's where we are really happy to work with CenarioVR. And I'm gonna talk more about this. First of all, I'm talking about the first product we use to sort of get to know with VR. And we created this own game, which is called the VR OntdekBox, the VR Discover Box in English. And I'm gonna share a small video with you. It's in Dutch, so I will put now the audio out and I will explain a little bit about what it is. And later on, I will show you how CenarioVR is also part of this. We created these games there ourselves, so that's something which is really cool to let you know. We do this for primary and high school, so I'm gonna show you this video first of all.
Nu mogen we aan de slag met een VR OntdekBox. Help elkaar, zet je goed in. Dus veel.
I just quickly try to put the audio out.
Yeah, one thing I have learned a lot of Dutch from working with Tom. So my Dutch is getting much better as we go on.
You're getting better at it, huh? All right, I'm gonna just show you in Dutch and then later explain, because I think still the images will show a lot. And maybe for some people, it's good to learn a little bit about the Dutch. It's a short video.
Nu mogen we aan de slag met een VR OntdekBox. Help elkaar, zet je goed in. Dus veel plezier. Dan gaan we beginnen.
kijkspel gedaan en dan komt er een wereldkaart te staan en dan moet je om je heen kijken waar je bent. Als je een fout hebt, dan komt er een kruis te staan. Als je een goed hebt, dan komt er een vinkje te staan.
Als je alles goed hebt, staat er je kan gaan dobbelen. En als je dan gedobbeld hebt, dan kom je steeds dichterbij je.
Nee, eerst de droom. Dat je allemaal mensen zag en zo leek wat piramide. En dat was wel leuk.
Want dan stond je op zo'n brug met allemaal mensen onder je. Dat is kei grappig. Want echt overal ben je bij de olifanten, IJsland, in de oceaan.
Gewoon omdat je leert en speelt tegelijk eigenlijk wel. Een beetje. Soort van, ja.
Echt heel leuk.
Okay, so this was a video about the OntdekBox, which is called the Discover Box. And what I want to share with you guys is, for a school, it's really important to start right away in your classroom. So if a project with VR has a lot of boundaries, it's hard to start and to have success moments. So with this box, it gives you a VR headset. It gives you also what you see here on the right, a board game. You have also playing cards and a sort of working together in two teams. So one team is sort of having the VR headset, and then they have to look around and make the right decisions. If they do this right and correctly, they can play on the board game, and then the other team is. So you have to switch the headsets, and we have a lot of positive feedback about this, and we created the games with CenarioVR. So that is the first part we want to show you, and what I would like to do is to show you a little bit how it works in CenarioVR, so you have a little bit of picture about how the game works, but also it's really important to see what is the value of a simple start with VR. So after this, we're going to talk more about how to create VR with your students. That's what we do as well with CenarioVR. But this is a little bit more boundary. You have to have a little bit more of knowledge. So this is the first step. So I'm going to go quickly out of the presentation and just show you how it works in Scenario. Let me see if I can put this away. So what is going to happen is if one of the schools receives a box, they get one code. We create this ourselves. It's called the Discovery Box 1, for example, and then they can log in. When they log in, you can see different games which we created, and we're still creating more and more games. For example, we take the expedition game, which works together with the board game as you saw in the video before. So we're gonna open up CenarioVR, where I think it's also important to tell, it's really easy. So you only have the app in the VR headset. They only need to log in once, and then they can use the games. So what I told you about the boundary, it's really, really low, and students can do this themselves as well. So a teacher can say, okay, we have 6 boxes, and the students have 1 hour of VR where they have a lot of enthusiasm and also education in a different way. How does the game work? If I play, you see Team Red, it's in Dutch, but it could also be made in English, of course. So Team Red starts. These are 2 people. And what you can see is, for example, we're in London right now.
Hello there. Oh, ik bedoel, hallo daar. Je staat voor de Big Ben, een enorme klok in de Engelse hoofdstad.
So here it says, well done. And then the part starts where the teammate is taking a playing card and then is telling where you have to see the objects. So you see here, which we made in the scenario, you have to look around and then choose for the right icons, and if you choose the wrong icon, you can't go on with the board game, which is in between the 2 teams. So for example, now I have the wrong icon, so I can't go ahead. So you need the playing cards, you need to have a team to play this game, and then for the next one, you have to give over the headset, and then the other team goes on, And that's how sort of the game works. And we do this with 360 photos or 360 videos. As you can tell.
Mooi uitzicht, hè? Je staat op de rand van de Grand Canyon. Deze kloof is ontstaan door water. Je kan de Grand Canyon bezoeken in de Verenigde Staten.
And then you have to look again for the right objects. That's how the game is working. We do this 360 video and also with 360 photo, but we all make this in CenarioVR. So it's a really cool way to help schools in the first step. Just gonna show you the last part because I think it's just a great 360 video. The kids are going wild with this because you're now in Africa and the elephants are coming towards you. So this is of course a great way to learn about the world, but also to have a lot of fun. So hopefully this gives a little bit of background about how our discovery box works.
Snel, je hebt nog maar 10 seconden.
I'm gonna click this away. So I'm gonna sign out again here. I'm going back to the presentation.
Tom, if I could just interject for one moment. I've seen the scenario so many times. I never knew it was associated with the board game. So I did, and I never understood that there were cards going back. That makes so much more sense now. I completely get it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, actually, we only launched it last week. So it's really new. But we get a lot of positive feedback from all these schools, and yeah, so we're really looking forward to make more games and also be more and more creative. So it's also a way of creating something for schools and asking them from how do you like it? What is the feedback? So for example, first we didn't have the cards and we saw it's not active enough. So that's why we added the cards.
All right, and we actually have a question here in the chat that says, do you film the 360 views? Where do you get your videos and photos?
Yeah, so yes, we are also a company which is creating 360. So that's what we do, and sometimes we also buy the 360 content from stock sites. So for example, we also have a game about robotics, and then we have also used some 360 images from a stock site.
So you didn't get to go to Africa and have elephants charging at you?
Yeah. Well, the Africa video, for example, is we worked also in a project a couple of years ago with a museum where we worked along with another 360 company, and they shooted this video, and we asked them to use this. So that's a little bit story behind that. So we also try to be creative to see how we can get this content from other parts of the world.
Okay. And so we have a question from Bianca Wright that says, are you open to working with universities to developing content?
Yeah, for sure. So what the plan is, because we get a lot of feedback, is to with the discovery box also to look for what is the right content, and of course we want to work with schools to choose the right content, and this is the same with companies. So for example, we have had questions about learning about traffic, for example, which is an organization in Europe. And they asked us how this is working, because they're thinking about how can we make it more impactful to learn about traffic. And what they still use at this moment is like a book with photos as we all learned it. But of course, it's cool and more impactful to be more close to the situation. And definitely when you can combine this with a game like this.
Okay.
Shall I head on to the second part of content? So what I just showed you was a game, and it's a really important. If you have the boxes, every teacher can start in 1 minute and it works. This is a really important condition as well to work with VR, definitely in schools. Then the second part is we get a lot of questions about schools, and they ask us, okay, but we have this subject, all different types of questions. And we said, okay, our strategy is not to create content for them, because this is sometimes also really hard, because everyone has a different, different request. So that's where we also looked at what is the best program for us to help students create VR by themselves, and then they can choose every subject they want to. And that's where we started with CenarioVR, so to also help students be creative. And again, the teachers are not working, but the students have to do the work, and that's what the teachers like as well. We call this Creating VR by Students. It's a package where we offer 15 licenses in cooperation with CenarioVR. We also created our own learning environment with videos and video tutorials. I can show you later about this. First of all, I would like to share a small video. It's again a little bit part in Dutch, but it shows a lot of CenarioVR as well. Let me see. This is how it is used, for example, in the schools. So you can see someone has a headset on, but a lot of people are also working on the laptop. And here is the video, which I want to show you. So this is a high school, but also a lot of higher level schools like universities also using this. As you can see, you can create your own questions. Yeah, just as scenario is working. And they work on the laptop first. This is our learning environment with all videos, how things are working. Also how you can add videos, how you can add media, etc. etc.
De volgende stap is het toevoegen van een vraag aan de VR. In deze video vertel ik hoe je dit kunt doen.
Welkom bij de VR e-learning van VRinSCHOOL.
Here we tell them it's important what scenario makes what scenario is remarkable about.
Goed gezien. Ga zo door.
Of course, this is again a little bit of Dutch, but what I wanted to say is what is really important to know about scenario, and I will show you also a little bit about this. I don't know, maybe some people know already a lot about CenarioVR, but what we always tell, it is really important that you have one click on the laptop, and then you can look at your project in the VR headset, and that's really a big difference from all other programs which are using 360. Just a quick view of how this is working with schools. So what we say is here, where I talked about the discovery box, we say then you have a user license, so you can't create your own content. But if you use CenarioVR in the creating yourself, then you get different in-lock codes. And I just show you fast how this is working. So they get 15 licenses, but they're sharing this. So it's not one student, one license. It's sort of using by a lot of students and a lot of classes. When I log in, I go to a different, I go more to the back side of CenarioVR. And here you can see all these types of content which you have made, where you can see here is about volcanoes, here is about climate, here is a school tour. So it can be a lot of different content, and we would like to give sort of the schools the ways to use this, and not to say you can only use this. No, they can do everything with this. So we also help them with 360 cameras and how to use these 360 cameras to also make the right videos in CenarioVR. Just a quick view how we explain this also to schools. For example, here is about climate. They have 3 ways to have content. They can use the 360 cameras, which we are offering them. There is also a way to use our database, and there is also a way to say, okay, I see something on Google Maps, and I want to use a photo from this. Then you have to be sure it's definitely for educational uses, usement. So how does it work? What we explain, and as I told you, maybe a lot of people know already a lot about this, but we always explain for schools, it's important you have just a drag and drop on the left side. And when you use VR, it's really cool to have it interactive. So if you want to make it interactive, you just have to use the plus, and then you can add, for example, a question, audio, a video, etc., etc. And then you can go a lot of ways to use it. And in the end, there is one click, you go to publish, and then you can put it in your headset. So this is a real short summary, but just to give you a short view about how easy it can be. What I would like to share with you as well is some examples of what schools made. We have this on a link, so I will try to open this to show you a little bit about different types of projects. Hopefully it will work with my internet.
So this is where I love the new Windows offline publish option, because when I'm demoing, you always get this internet.
Yeah.
So you publish offline and it doesn't need the internet. So, you know.
Yeah, you're right. Here I can see. No, it is working. I just didn't click. So here you can see we help schools to also give them some inspiration. So what can you all do with different subjects? I'm gonna show you here is an example what a school made. So we didn't make this, but a school did. And this is about healthcare.
Nou, dat is in ieder geval de eerste laag. En dan gaan we nu het drukverbandje aanleggen.
Welk type drukverband moet je gebruiken?
So she is showing how to put on a bandage. The video is stopping. You have the headset on, so you're really in this environment of a hospital, and then you have to make the right answer. So this is what we are learning these schools to use, and that way they can create their own content. I think this is a nice example.
Belangrijk bij het aanleggen van een drukverband is dat je dus...
Just to show you some other examples, here about traffic, for example, which a school was working with a traffic exam. You can see definitely the difference when you put on a headset compared to the paper or the book. You have to look around and to see who is... what decision you have to make, as in this case the person with the red shirt. So this is also again an example of how you can use 360 and creating your own content. Then we have, for example, to have a conversation about Spanish. Don't know if there are Spanish people here.
¿Cómo quieres pagar?
So just a simple way of asking a question. The teacher asks a question, and then you have to give the right answer.
Está bien.
And then you can, for example, say, okay, when it's the right answer, she will respond to this in the next 360 video. So you have a lot of options, and we try to help the school with this. Let's see if we have some other examples. A school tour, I think this is quite simple. Sometimes they work together with companies to have a visit with companies. For example, this is in a pig farm. And you can see again, you're in this farm. Normally you can't go there as a student. And then they have ask a question where they have to learn about. So I can show you a lot more, but this is just to give you a little bit of perspective about creating VR yourself. So I will go out of this presentation. Hopefully you guys get a little bit of picture about, so first of all, I started with creating or with the discovery box. Then we take the next step to creating VR by students, where we definitely say to them, if you want to use this correctly and to really have value out of this, you make sure you integrate it in your education program. Because if you just say, we're going to see if we're going to use it, and then it's not going to be used, because all these teachers have a lot of work, and it really needs to have a place in your education program. Then it will work. Some schools we see they don't integrate it well, and then it's gonna be hard to give it the value it has, because you need to put some time in it. So hopefully that gives a picture. Here I don't want to talk too long about, but we also help schools with, for example, 3D designs. You can walk through 3D models. The next step I want to talk about is the other apps. So there are also a lot of apps which you can use just to have a picture. We also tell them, but this is not the basis. The basis is more like a discovery box and creating VR yourself, or the 3D design, and then integrate this in your school program. Then the second part is about the hardware. Of course, you need the headsets. So I want to talk a little bit about this. As you can see here, we use mostly the Meta Quest 2. What is good to know, I think, is it's a really great headset because it's easy to use. At this moment, you only need to have a Meta account. We do this for the schools, and we do this not with real names, because then you have a sort of privacy problem. So, and also the app, for example, of CenarioVR is not really a social app in a way of connecting with a lot of other people. And for a school, this is actually good, because then you also have maybe the privacy problem where Meta is sort of taking data out of the choices you make in a social way. We also help schools with, for example, these stations. We created this ourselves. The stations are easy to use. You can have 16 headsets in one station, and it's easy for charging, but also to always have the headsets in a clean way and not make a mess of the headsets, because it's a big investment. So make sure we always tell them to use it in a good way to have a station. Then we have the 360 cameras. At this moment, we use the Insta-RS1 camera, and we also have a case for this. So you only have to click once. It's sort of like working with a fish eye. That is the easy way to work with it. It's a quite new product which we like to use. So to make your own 360 content and then, for example, add it in CenarioVR. Here you can see another station. This is actually for 4 headsets. It's also a charging station, but it's easier to be mobile in the school. So I think that's also good to know. This is not so important because I told a lot about this. Here you can see the case, whereas also all the equipment for the 360 camera. And then in the end of my presentation, I want to talk a little bit about the training, but also I mentioned this already a couple of times. What is important to really make it a success and to grow with VR in your school? So I put a couple of bullets here, how to get successful with VR in your school. First of all, I already said it, make it part of your education program. Make sure it's integrated, because if you just use it as a fun gadget, then it's not really growing, and that's really a pity, because you can think about a lot of ways to use VR in your educational program. You also saw the first video where it's really having impact in the future, but you have to start somewhere and start small and then grow. We also ask the school always, what is the education purpose do you choose? Sometimes it can be about technology, which is in the Netherlands. Also, the government is investing a lot in this, so prepare them for the future. But it can also be to learn more about a sort of subject, as we showed you. It can be about getting to know the world, but it can also be to know more about healthcare or another subject. We also say to schools, start with a small group. As we do trainings, we do online trainings about scenario as well, and we do physical trainings, but we always ask a small group of teachers which is really going to work with it. So not the teachers which are thinking, maybe just check it out and see how it is. No, when we're really going to train, we want to do this with a small group of teachers. They're really enthusiastic and grow from there in the school. And then the last part I want to give to you is it needs to make sure it has to be simple to use. Everything you use, if it's the content, if it's the headsets, make sure it's simple to use, because teachers, as we know, are really busy. You have a group of 20 or 30 chaotic people in front of you, which are really energetic. Make sure it is simple for them to use VR, and then you will have a lot of success. So if there are more questions, I would like to answer them. And thank you very much for the opportunity to share my story here. So hopefully it gave some inspiration.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, there are lots of questions, and I'm sure there'll be more coming in. Several people asked, and some of them answered, but I wasn't really sure exactly what was the name of the camera you used.
So it's the Insta-RS 1.
Okay. Oh, the one. So is that the new one, the 1-inch one, or is that the?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's correct.
Now, do you find that new? It's fairly new. Now, do you find that one is a better camera than the old Insta360?
Well, before we actually used the Ricoh Theta Z1, which is also a nice camera for easy to use. But I think now for 3 months, we first tried out with the Insta, and the new one also with the price. It's really nice to use. It's a little bit cheaper in the Netherlands. So that's why we chose this camera at this moment.
Okay. So there's a little bit of discussion went on, and some of it got answered, but I figure it's worth talking about anyway. There's a question about, have you done any work where the camera, so it's a first person point of view, the camera is a person in the conversation, and how do you manage that? I know how I do it, but have you done that where you have a first person kind of view, you're like a conversational type of
yeah. Well, I think it's important to also make to divide it, because when you look at schools, for example, it's also a big step for them to even start making photos and start making content. So, but when we use it in a professional way, we actually did last time we did a experience for a company. And then we actually choose to make it like a third person idea, because we always use we use the camera static, so we don't advise to walk with it or have movement in this. And if we are really talking into the camera, but then we really want to use actors, because it's not really easy to keep it authentic. So that's why we like to use more third person. But if we want to use first person, we like to use actors and have a little bit of distance, of course, from the camera. I don't know if this is completely, giving a reply on the questions, but I'm sure there was a lot of opinions about this.
Yeah, there were a lot of opinions about whether you would actually put it like on a helmet on someone's head and have them walk around.
Yeah, well, what I can say is because before we did this also with helmets and stuff like that, we don't like it if it's in VR. We see people sometimes have headache problems and stuff like that, because the feeling you have in the real life, you're sitting or you're standing and you're not moving, and then the camera is moving, which is causing some trouble in your head. So that's why we are really cautious about that.
I can't agree with that anymore. I call that the roller coaster effect, and everyone wants to move it and have the camera move and have you walk around because you can, but just because you can, it's not a good idea. Even in a browser, sometimes it gets a little unnerving to see it moving like that. But then when you're in a VR headset, you literally do. Even I, who spend part of every day in a VR headset, I feel nauseous when the camera moves around like that. So I have a question that says, do you use any LiDAR scanner to capture data and create content for the schools? And the answer is, if you're using CenarioVR,
sorry.
It says, are you using a LiDAR scanner? So that would be mapping out the room. And
No.
for CVR, the answer would be no, because you don't have any LiDAR depth portion of it.
And I can tell maybe that's also an answer about some of the specific questions. What we learn a lot with the schools, where I ended my presentation with, there's definitely a difference between a professional 360 shooter and a school which is using 360 to be creative with new technology like VR. So I think that is something where you have to be aware of, that there is a difference about professional using using 360, and also with schools. So when we make our own projects, we definitely are more specific into these regions than when we're talking with schools, because the first challenge for schools is even to work with it, you know. So it's even a 360 photo, add on a question, and then learn with this. That is already a big step for them.
Right. And someone asked you to repeat, because this is kind of important, repeat what you said about meta and privacy. You mentioned that quickly.
Yeah, it is always a discussion also with schools, because more and more questions are asked, of course. It's a little bit a tricky part, because of course the part where Meta comes in is they are looking for a social platform in VR, and then of course get data out of this to use it in advertisement, for example. That's sort of the strategy of them. And what you can see if you use, for example, the Meta Quest, you see some of the social games. So like more and more, if you use to be together in the virtual world, for example, we have this webinar now with the laptop, but we could also see each other and talk with each other and stuff like that. So a lot of times when you move around like that, and I'm really Tom, then they're getting data out of you. But when you use, for example, CenarioVR with accounts which are not even with a person, you can't connect them with a real person, because we make sort of fictional accounts, then for schools it's better to use it, because you can't really say, okay, a teacher or a student is really giving data to Meta or something like that. But it's definitely something which is important to share with schools, to how Meta and also Pico with a ByteDance, for example, it's with the TikTok and stuff like that. It's also a social media platform, and they all have the data business case. So if you are aware of that, then Scenario, for example, is a good option. But if it's getting more social, then you have to be aware of this as a school, and that's the only thing we can do to try to explain how it works. But yeah, it's not only with VR, of course, because schools are using also types of Google and other stuff. So yeah, it is something where we try to be transparent about. But yeah, you have to understand a little bit how it works. Yeah,
right. And there's kind of a related question that asks about how secure are the headset and apps. This person is working with a government agency, and cybersecurity is always a top consideration. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not into detail knowing about, because that's more, for example, the software of CenarioVR. So I think even more, John, you can even tell more about this. But we are definitely also with John always in conversations with, okay, how do we manage this, and how does the software of CenarioVR is safe to use, because of course we get these questions as well.
Right. Yeah, it's very important that CenarioVR doesn't really record any PII, no personal data. We keep away from that as much as possible. The only thing would be the user's login, which is email, but you don't have to necessarily use a real email, as Tom was referring to. So we try to keep as much personal information out as possible. Excellent question here. Someone said that you mentioned that this was recently launched, but do you have any metrics on the impact this is having on learning goals and students' performance?
Yeah. No, because we launched it last week. So the metrics we have is that if we walk into a classroom, we see every student being really enthusiastic, and the feedback we get from teachers is that is for them a really important first step to have to make them enthusiastic about learning. So that's definitely the first step. We are also not saying that this is giving you the biggest learning impact with the games, but it's definitely a step to learn to use new technology and to get a feeling about this. And of course, yeah, there is a lot of progression possible to even get more learning impact, and we definitely will look into that. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of questions, by the way. You got a lot of things in.
That's
One of the
good.
questions very interesting is, do the students enjoy creating 360 content?
Yeah, so the nice thing about what we do, and that is also sort of the mission we have, is to make students give them the possibility to imagine and to use their creativity. And that's what we see with creating VR themselves. If you give them the chance as a school to be creative, then they love creating their own scenarios. So they really like this. And what we see as well is they're really proud if they can present a project. So for example, we had a school which was asked by a city council to make a sort of promotion about their city. And then, of course, with 360 and with Scenario, they could use this. They could do this fairly well. It's not too hard for them. And in the end, they also presented this with the VR headsets, also in the city council. And these people really love this because they didn't even know about this as well. So also for the school, it was a great way to show how innovative they are. Yeah, hopefully that gives an answer.
Yeah. Another one, just a few more. It says, what do you consider as the most important added value of VR?
We always say, if you learn, you like to learn in real life, of course. It doesn't really matter what you are learning about, but if you want to learn about Africa, the best way is to go to Africa for sure. If you want to learn about healthcare, you want to be in a hospital. But of course, there are a lot of moments you can't be there. Definitely when you're in a sort of classroom which is not really inspiring. And if you can help them to go to other places, that is the first step. If you are not able to go in real life. And the other part is if you can make it interactive, then you really get sort of learning impact, because the problem can be when you use, for example, YouTube VR, you can go to Africa and put on the headset. It's cool. But then after a while, you're like, yeah, I saw it. It's like a video. So it's not interactive. So those two parts we like a lot about VR. And maybe the last addition to this is if you are not using only 360, there are also great examples of, probably everyone saw this also in the video, where it's about animation and you can use your hands and be more and more real life. That is, of course, the future, and it's a great way to learn as well. But what we like about the 360, that it's easy to use. So that's a little bit the difference about animation, where you can't create your own, or it's fairly hard. And with 360, you can use your imagination and then go to places you've never been.
Right, absolutely. I have a few questions here that I think are more for me. One of those is, can this work for training in a power utility company? The answer is absolutely. We have several that do train on that. That's an example of something where VR makes a big difference, because you're working with things that are potentially deadly, high power. And you want somebody to train in an area where it's okay to fail a couple of times before you get in. A single failure with a large power line can be very bad. So yes, it definitely works for power utility companies, and we have customers that do that. Another question about, is this browser-based or does it use a game engine? And I think, as Tom has mentioned, it's using CenarioVR. So CenarioVR has its own engine, and it runs in WebXR. It can run in the browser. It also has an engine that runs on phones, iOS and Android, and we have engines that run on all of the more popular headsets that are out there, including the newest ones from Meta and Pico. So yes, it runs on all the above, and it uses the CenarioVR game engine. One question says, on the basis of which didactic or educational model is the platform built? And I'm not sure if that was to you or to me. CenarioVR itself is agnostic as far as what you use as far as a didactic model. Do you have a certain model you followed on your building of the courses?
No, because it's definitely depending on where are you using it for? As I mentioned before, you can use it for a subject. You can use it also to learn more about technology. So it's definitely depending on the start.
Right. It's unique. And one last one that came in and said you showed a picture of some kids wearing headsets and some not. Are the headsets optional for the game?
What do you mean with optional?
Is it optional? Can they go with or without headsets? Could they use tablets, for instance?
Like that. Yeah, of course. As I also showed you on the screen, you could do it without the headset, but actually we never use it without the headset because the impact is much bigger with the headset. And definitely for this game, you use the headset. But as you saw, there's only one person which is having the headset on. So we don't believe that everyone has to have a headset on to learn with VR. You can better head it over, and that way you can also make a lower investment with all the headsets. So that is how the game is working. You can though stream, of course, the game. That's what we do sometimes as well, also with workshops. Then you can see what is happening on the screen, but the rest can see this without the headset.
Okay, and another question just popped in. Is data being captured via XAPI statements?
I'm not sure about this actually.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So anything on CenarioVR is natively XAPI, and we send XAPI statements across, and that's the analytics that you see on the other end. That's all generated from the LRS that is built into CenarioVR. So you actually don't have to do anything special to add XAPI, and it's just there. You just get it. One of the cool things, and I'm actually not sure if you're using this, Tom, is it's a relatively new feature that anytime you create a variable in CenarioVR, you get an XAPI statement for that. And so you can create custom statements and custom analytics based upon variables.
Well, yeah, the cool thing is, so maybe you have a feel for this, but so we have in our company, of course, the people who are really creating also the games, and I'm looking more to the end part of it. There's a lot to learn as well for me in this case. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one more question just popped in. Have you ever worked with or considered use of Unity to develop your VR experiences?
Yeah, we actually did with some students who are learning to work with Unity. We also created a game before about biology, but we saw there the intensity and the knowledge you need are not totally in our company and are giving a much bigger boundary for the most schools. Maybe some specific schools are working with Unity. Then it's really cool. But the biggest part of the schools just want to use VR and see how they can use it in a simple way. And then Unity is, I think it's too complicated.
Right. It gets complicated fast. I mean, trust me, we write our runtime engine in Unity, so I'm very familiar with how complicated it can be. The last question is from Joe, and Joe, I promise I will get to you. It says, do you have any examples from embedded 3D models, FBX? I don't know that you use any 3D models in the work that you are doing, but yes, we do. We use a format called GLB, and if I have an open minute, I will show it to you. Probably not, because we do need to get on. It is now 10 o'clock and I need to move on. But Tom, thank you so much. It was obviously a fantastic presentation. You generated so many questions and a lot of interest. That was very nice. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you too.
All right.
Good luck.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right, so let me get in and switch over to me. All right, I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to move on to the next one, which is mining safety DR. But I am going to take one quick second.
Actually, John, the next one is Carlo.
Oh, is it? Okay, this was the one I had, the order I had him in. All right. Okay, let me get.
Yeah, we like to just keep you on your toes.
I don't have a page for Carlo in here. Okay. Well then, I will have to just introduce Carlo on the fly. But first, actually, let me just take 1 second. I do want to answer the question that Joe had brought up. And so I am still sharing. So he asked if we do support 3D animations, and we do. 3D objects and 3D objects with animations. So we do, and we use the FBX, not the FBX format, the GLB format. So this is a 3D model. It's a one with a GLB. So you can see you can rotate it in 3D space and position it on here in any way. And then, you know, it can be part of that. It can be used in drag and drops. It can be used in motion paths, lots of things like that. Also key to that, though, is we also support animations within them. So in this case, I have it's an air balloon engine, and it has an animated exploding view, and I can trigger that in one of several ways. I can trigger it by using an animate call, and I pick the object. And then when I pick that object, if it is a 3D object with animations built in, we'll do that. And we have a choice of looping it or not looping it. You can also make it an effect. So again, it is could be an effect if I just want it to animate. If it's a 3D model, I'll have that choice of a 3D model animation, and I could select it as well. And that would mean that it would just automatically animate and continue to animate as an effect. So to see what that looks like, here we would have that 3D model inside of our view, and I can call an animate call on it, and it will actually animate the 3D model. And remember, I did have it in loop, so it will continue that animation. You could also pause the animation at any point. You can make it spinnable such that if I wanted to, I could have a user spin it in 3D space. So lots of things you can do with 3D models for sure.